magic in the air. בכל הגוף בוער. Feel the magic in the air.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Planet Soccer Podcast. This is our last World Cup preview show. It's the big one. It's our bracket predictor. It's our X Factor episode. It's our final thoughts on this year's World Cup, which opens with the opening ceremonies in 2 days' time from when you'll be watching this on Friday or when it comes out, in some place called Qatar. He's Dylan. I'm Reed. Of course, we are the hosts of the Planet Soccer Podcast. Dylan, well, what do you think? We're 2 days away, 3 days away.
It's snowing here, and we're 2 days away from the World Cup, so that's a little weird. There are plenty of rumors around bribery for the World Cup. I think that's been about confirmed by now. The host nation, there's a potential bribery match-fixing scandal already, and as much as I hate it for the sport of soccer, this is like, it feels like Firefest on so many levels. We got match fixing. We have those, the spectator hoteling room accommodations, whatever the heck you want to call those tents with fake doors. Like, I hope, because it is the World Cup and it is such a monumental sporting event, that everything does turn out. But part of me is as much excited for the possible shitstorm, as you put it. Storm. All right, we're just going in. All right, yes, the shitstorm that could incur.
We got a video. We got a video taken down by YouTube for inappropriate content, and I really hope it wasn't for my cussing on one of the episodes. I don't remember which one it was, but YouTube, I am sorry if you didn't like that. But I marked that our videos are not made for kids, so it shouldn't be a problem. But yeah, some of the stuff that's already been coming out of Qatar. You got the weird groups of fans, which of course I'm not saying that there can't be Middle Eastern fans of Brazil or Middle Eastern fans of England. However, it just seems very weird. And you see the shirts that they're wearing on the back. It says Brazil fans Qatar. It all seems kind of like a marketing or imaging stunt. So
it feels like, for those of you, I mean, I've been a soccer fan for a while, but didn't necessarily know the history of the World Cup. Everybody knows about the Berlin Olympics. Argentina World Cup had similar implications, and people are comparing Qatar to that. I don't think it's quite that extreme necessarily. I say that knowing the speculation and reports around migrant worker deaths. But it certainly is going to be a World Cup with a bit of a black mark on it. Again, I highly recommend. I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast, but
I was just going to say the same thing.
The FIFA Uncovered, I believe is what it's called, on Netflix documentary about FIFA corruption from really its inception almost. Well, not quite. Really, it started in the 70s when a new president took over. But the corruption that's been afoot in FIFA for 5 decades now. So I don't want to let FIFA off the hook because it's had ongoing corruption, but I am it almost made me, in a really strange way, feel better about this World Cup, because it's like, this just is the sport, and whether that's okay or not, it's the world's biggest game, it's the world's biggest tournament, it's the world's biggest spectacle. So I'm trying to watch it through a lens where I recognize the possible, likely human rights issues afoot. However, I am still going to try and watch it as a soccer tournament as best I can, because I think from a soccer perspective, it has a lot of potential to be a very, very fun and entertaining tournament. That being said, I don't want to forgive the possible human rights atrocities that have taken place because of this World Cup. But I am trying to separate it as far as our podcast goes. We are a soccer first podcast. We have encouraged, and I still encourage everybody to do their own research and form their own opinions on the political aspect of the World Cup. But right now, the focus of this, while we have spent the first 4 or 5 minutes talking about the political, the main focus of this moving forward from here until the finals is going to be on soccer. If you're choosing to not, participate in the World Cup this year, I don't necessarily blame you. But from our perspective, we've kind of said our piece. But I think our focus here on out is going to be on the soccer, because I do think it'll be a really special tournament from a soccer perspective.
Yeah, it certainly will be. FIFA Uncovered. If you want to start with that, watch it, and then do your own research on this World Cup. It is kind of a shame that this probably should have been the U.S.'s World Cup, because on the field, it will be a great tournament, and there's plenty of storylines across the board as far as on the field play
It's
goes.
hard to say 4 years out, but on the surface, it looks like a better World Cup soccer-wise than the 26 World Cup.
Yeah.
With it being so many, we talked about it in the groups, but with it being so many people's likely, possibly last run in the World Cup, it is a shame that it will be clouded by the theatrics, dramatics, politics, whatever you want to call it, of everything going on behind the scenes. But for our intensive purposes, we will focus on how exciting of a soccer World Cup we have at hand.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and get into it. We've obviously already done every group preview. If you guys haven't watched those, go ahead and check them out. They feel like Group A feels like so long ago, but I think it was just like 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks ago. What we're going to do here, we're going to go through every group. We're not going to talk about them at length, but we're going to give you a player X factor and kind of a situation or storyline X factor, something to keep an eye on and a player to keep an eye on. So we'll go through those, and then we'll get down into the knockouts. And via talking about the knockouts, we'll let you know who we think is going to win each group and come in second just by talking about those. So Dylan, go ahead and start us off with Group A. Who is your X factor?
We are getting
a group of mystery.
We are, yeah. I mean, the Qatar, Ecuador, Senegal, Netherlands, with the injuries that are at hand for Senegal, it has thrown a wrinkle. But for me, the biggest X factor, I think, and not necessarily as far as the group outcome goes, but as far as the squad moving forward, is the Netherlands keeper situation. The very surprise omission of Silasson, the Dutch keeper. He has, I believe, 60-ish caps for the Dutch. He's won 5 or 6, I think, career league titles in various leagues, from Barcelona at Barcelona and La Liga to Ajax and the Eredivisie. Like he is, by all accounts, the most decorated Dutch goalkeeper. He was completely left off of the team, and instead, the X factor is Remco Pasveer, who appears to be their starting goalkeeper in this tournament, and it puts a lot of pressure on him. He's put up very average at best statistics for his club at Ajax. His save percentage is like 67% or something. I mean, a lot of us thought of Ajax as not a favorite necessarily out of their group in the Champions League, but a team that could make some noise, because they always are. And I think the reason they didn't was partially because of him. So the fact that the Dutch are likely going to move forward with him as their keeper by all accounts and notes is a little bit surprising, and something I am certainly going to keep an eye on moving forward. Again, I think everybody is on the same page. Netherlands likely wins the group. Netherlands certainly qualifies out of the group. So the question here on my X factor is more, will he be able to perform at a high enough level to take the Dutch where they should go with the basis of the rest of this roster?
Yeah, you think some of these powerful soccer countries, you think they'd just be stacked from top to bottom at every position, but it's weird. You'll have, say, maybe Germany's missing a left back here, Netherlands is missing a keeper there, somebody else is missing something there. So it's not all bright shining stars at every position. My X factor for this group situation wise is what's going to happen in seconds. You got the Sadio Mane injury. You've now got, which Senegal's a completely different team without Sadio Mane, especially goal scoring wise. Goal scoring, yeah, I said that right. And then you got these rumors about the Qatar bribery. Qatar's apparently bribing Ecuador to lose their first game, which I think Ecuador has a legitimate chance to come in second in this group now with Sadio Mane going down. But if they lose to Qatar, that's out the window. So if I was a betting person, I'm staying far away from second place in this group. I don't know what's going to go on. I don't think Vegas knows. The X factor is just the uncertainty for me in this second spot, not because of we don't know who the best team is or whatnot, just because you now have an injury to the best team, and then there's this secondary bribery scandal, which I would assume would end in the group stage with Qatar bowing out. I can't imagine that they get out of this group. However, it will be something to watch for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. A sneak peek into my betting picks that will be released Friday, probably afternoon, my futures picks. 2 days ago, before the Mane official news came out and the Ecuador-Qatar bribery match fixing scandal may have started, I had already placed a bet on Netherlands first and Senegal second. Oof. So that is still a pick I will release because it's a pick I have to stand by. I am not allowed to cash it out by DraftKings. I already tried. So I will be sticking by that bet because I don't have a choice, but that is not necessarily a bet I would fully endorse because so much has changed in the last 2 days since I placed that bet on multiple fronts. So I do agree. I think second place is going to be much more of a storyline than we would have predicted a week ago when we thought there was a good chance Mane would make appearances at least, maybe not be fully fit, but make appearances at least, and certainly different now with the potential of the Ecuador-Qatar match fixing. The details that were leaked, if you will, by I want to say he's a British professor with Middle Eastern ties, came out and said there's been multiple sources of his inside the
he's like a
camp.
former minister, not minister like religious wise, but minister of the interior or something for Qatar, who's now an expat in England. Yeah.
So there are some it seems to be valid claims that this is legitimate. So I would urge everyone to stay away from, it's not our job. We do still have full-time jobs, but it's our job on this podcast to still predict. So we will still predict. And I did bet before this happened.
Job. It's small, but it's our job.
But I would advise you to be very wary of the second place selection in this group for sure. So I think that's definitely an interesting X factor, how that all plays out, and something that, again, I'm interested in. Might not be the best for the soccer on the field, but it'll be interesting to take a look at.
Yeah. Dylan, I'm doing an audible here, and let's just go ahead and make our first and second place picks as we're going through this group, just so
all right.
we already have them in the mind, and then we'll get down to the knockout. So, in first, I think we both have Netherlands. In second, I am going to go ahead and jump Ecuador over Senegal. One, maybe just to be a little different. I don't know if you still have Senegal. I just have everything that all the videos and stuff I've watched with guys who know the sport better than us. They've all said, if Mane is healthy, if he can go. So I'm just going to use that caveat and say, plus there's going to be weird stuff that happens in this World Cup. It's not going to be chalk. So I'm going to throw Ecuador in second.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Senegal's a team with a healthy Mane. Drew 1-1 against Iran. So it's certainly not to discount Iran, but it's certainly a fair selection. I'm still sticking with Senegal because I have a bet slip on Senegal, so I'm not going to waver off that. We're just going all in on Senegal. So I will take Netherlands to finish first and Senegal to finish second in Group A.
All right. Group B. Who's your X factor?
Oh, yeah. So Sadar Azman, he is a Iranian striker. I think he had 10 goals in 14 games in qualifying and seemed
You're
to
putting
be...
an X factor and you think he's a striker? You got to know his position. Come on.
Okay.
I got to call you out for that.
I think he scored, I believe it was 10 goals in 14 games in qualifying. However, at Bayer Leverkusen, he scored 1 goal in 22 matches in the last 2.5 or so years. So he's by no means a stalwart in the Bayer Leverkusen starting lineup. However, we saw how lethal he can be. He's a guy that is a very hot topic for the Iranian team and a guy that I think teams like Wales and the United States will be forced to somewhat plan around. So the biggest question for me, again, is not who's going to finish first in this group. I think everybody is agreeing England will finish first. I think that second place grouping, there's 3 teams that have a somewhat legitimate chance. And
they all have one X factor that if that X factor clicks, then
have a very good chance. And for me, because Iran's kind of the dark horse here, it's a team a lot of us don't know a lot about because of the confederation they play in, because of where most of their players play. My X factor is going to be.
I want to pick Iran on.
Politically, that's completely fair. I don't think many people,
especially with the news that came out this week, which we're not even going to. Don't even say what it was, but it just do
your research. There's been news on this player specifically. There were questions if he would even make the team. Aside from that, based on his political, if you will, beliefs and standings while he was at Bayer. So I think the X factor is, will he be able to overcome all of that? Will he be able to overcome some questionable play against more elite competition in league and shine the way he did in qualifying? Because if he does, I think Iran can certainly disrupt this group on many levels. For me, I think that's the X factor, because a lot of people have been, Iran's better than you think. Iran's better than you know. And I think he's one of the reasons Iran is better than you think and better than you know, because of the statistics and play he was able to put forward in qualifying. I think he's one of the things a lot of people should and will be worried about.
People that still know much more about this sport than us have picked Iran to get out of this group. At least that it's certainly a possibility.
It is a possibility.
So I think that's a good shout. I'm glad you're going with some X factors that, are off the beaten path. I appreciate that. I'm going to give a player in this one, and I'm going to say Gareth Bale. It has to be for me, right? If we would be remiss not to mention him in this X factor group. The United States is more talented than Wales and Iran from top to bottom. Like, maybe not from top to bottom, but just throughout, it's more talented roster. But Gareth Bale, he's one of the top, let's say, 20 players of me and Dylan's generation. The players that we are old enough to have watched their entire career. And if he, like we said, he's a different player when he puts on that Welsh shirt. So if he clicks and he scores 4 or 5 goals in the group stage, Wales is qualifying second. I think he has to be the X factor for me. I would say, and this is more of a going forward thing, I think the England center back situation, or just their back line in general, is a huge X factor for them going forward into the knockouts. And then the US setup, or the US style of play. How do they utilize, if they do at all, Giovanni Reina, which you have to utilize him in some way, but his best position's a 10, and Greg obviously doesn't play a 10, for better or worse, usually for worse. So my X factor is going to be Gareth Bale. I said I know I would do situations, but I could not mention Gareth Bale there.
I'll throw a Welsh situational in there for you.
Okay.
I think the storyline outside of him on the Welsh side is the number of English-born players playing for Wales. I think they have 9, which is the second most, I believe, or second or third most by all of the countries in the World Cup for players playing for a country they weren't born in. Now, you obviously have to have ties. So
I think I saw that graphic on Twitter today, and I didn't click on it and expand it, but I should have.
Yeah, the Wales is interesting because it's 1 German and I think 9 English-born players. So I think that factor, if nothing else, that factor in that one game matchup against England is certainly going to be a storyline. Players that I'm sure feel slighted by England throughout their career, feel like they never really got a fair chance, so they went to Wales to get a chance to play on this big stage, and how they're able to capitalize on that, or England shows why they're on Wales and not on England. Like it could go either way, but that's certainly a more comprehensive storyline X factor for me as well.
Yeah. You have England winning the group?
I unfortunately do. I have England winning the group, and I have the U.S. finishing in second. I think, as you said, I think the U.S. is certainly just much more talented top to bottom. Triple G, good old Greg, does absolutely terrify me. However, I do think that there's just too much talent on the U.S. As poor of a manager as I think Greg can be, has been, and will continue to be as long as he's around. I think there's just too much talent to not finish ahead of Wales and Iran.
All right, well, I'm picking Wales. I have
You're going to love my betting picks.
I have it in my bracket. I'm looking at it right now, and I'm not changing it.
What a
Just-
contrarian American prediction. I love it.
I know,
love it.
I know. I just
Do it
I
for the
have to.
views.
Yeah. I've got several controversial picks, so just get ready
That's
for
what
that.
we're here for.
Yeah. Let's move on to Group C. Dylan, who's your player?
So I actually picked two here because
Okay.
I contemplated it a bit. I have two on two different groups, but I have Chucky Lozano and Raul Jimenez for Mexico.
Yeah.
Mexico in group play finished 11 goals behind, or I'm sorry, group play in qualifying behind the U.S. and 33 goals behind Canada. They need goals. They are in a group that will demand goals. I mean, they're in a very stacked group goal scoring wise. When you look at Messi, Dybala, Di Maria, Martinez, Lewandowski, like there is goal scoring here. So I think this is another group where first is likely a foregone conclusion. But second is, I mean, we talked about in our group review. I think Mexico may match up better against Argentina than Poland. So I think there is a chance they pull a draw there if they play at the top of their game, but they will need to score. You're not going to get a 0-0 draw against this Argentina side. You're going to need at least one goal. And for a team that's struggled to score, those are probably their two most prolific scorers. So it will be a huge X factor in this group if those guys are able to find goals in a pretty high scoring group.
Yeah. My story, it's a storyline. It's not an X factor. It's also Mexico related. No, just kidding. Is Saudi Arabia, are Saudi Arabia's kits cool enough to get them to the knockouts?
I mean, if we're going on kits, Saudi Arabia might win the whole damn thing.
They might win the tournament.
Those white with the palm leaves are fresh and are a lot like Newcastle's shirts this year. But
my storyline is actually, will Mexico fail to advance past the group stage for the first time since 1978? They were banned in 1990, did not qualify in 82. However, did not qualify in 74 or 82. However, for every term they have qualified for since the 70s, they've advanced past the group. So something to keep an eye on. Dylan, who do you have winning this group?
Argentina. Drum roll, please.
Yeah.
And then for me, I do have Mexico finishing second. I think at this point, I don't know if it is my hopefulness for CONCACAF. I don't know if it is I've been scarred by Mexico, and triumphed over Mexico a fair amount of times both ways as a U.S. men's national team fan. I don't necessarily know what it is. I don't love a lot about this Mexico roster. But when I do look at the Poland roster, it is very dependent on Lewandowski scoring goals. And I think Mexico is a team that will be able to keep him possibly in check, maybe not goalless against them, but keep him at least somewhat in check. So I do have Mexico going through as the second group and extending that qualification streak.
I've got Poland in second.
I love this. I love this.
It's great, right? I do think that Ochoa could for sure stand on his head against Poland and get them through. He's a legend. He's a legend for Mexico, very similar to Navas for Costa Rica. I'm just going to go with some of the more European talent on Poland, and I know that sounds very soccer elitist of me. Yeah. However, I just think that Poland might sneak two by Mexico and just win 2-1 or 2-0. So
yeah, by no means is this a group I feel confident picking the second place team in. Yeah, by no stretch did I make any wagers on this. It is in my opinion kind of a crapshoot there between Poland and Mexico. Group D. Yeah, so my Group D, I was kind of lame on this one. This is a no contest group for me.
I'm not lame on this one at all.
This is kind of a no contest group for me. So I actually didn't pick a player here. There are some players on France that you could say are X factors, much like I did with Netherlands, where not as much an X factor for the group, but an X factor moving forward out of this group. Because in my opinion, this is if not the most clear-cut 1-2, it's pretty darn close to the most clear-cut 1-2 in the whole. And you can argue, I've seen actually a lot of people argue that Denmark will finish over France. But I don't.
You're stealing my thunder. Stop.
There isn't a specific player that I thought would be the catalyst for that to possibly happen. So I did really have a tough time, and I'm lame. And I picked no player because, in my opinion, this group is a foregone conclusion. So I did not actually pick an X factor here. So great podcasting that I just copped
Yeah,
out
great
and took
job, John.
nothing.
Really getting us the views on this one.
Hey man, I took the Dutch keeper who had freaking 5 caps and an Iranian forward for my first
Yeah.
3, so I'm allowed a little leeway here.
So you decided to take Group C off.
D.
Yeah. Sorry, D. Yeah, D. My storyline for this group is with everything going on around France, will they be able to start group stage fast? Because I don't think there's any question they get out of this group. However, they could lay a duck or lay an egg in that.
That would be impressive.
Yeah. They've obviously got the Nkunku injury now, which, I mean, they've got plenty of goal scoring. It's not really going to affect them. But you've got the whole Pogba thing, no Conte. It's just going to be a very, very different international French team. And because of that, I have Denmark winning this group, and I have France in second on goal differential.
You're getting real nitty gritty, almost as nitty gritty as my first 2 X Factors. I am loving this. For me, I do have France in first and Denmark in second, but
which, Dylan, hold on, I want to say one more thing before you continue.
I'm too
sets
chalk.
Up a juicy.
Oh, right, it's Argentina France.
Round 16.
Yeah, it's Argentina France, which would be incredible. And if you are
probably the best round 16 matchup of all time,
and if you are Messi hype boy like both of us tend to be, that is not the matchup, to be clear, you want. Not that Denmark would be a cakewalk for Argentina by any means. I think for me that's one of the reasons I've struggled to put any futures bets on Argentina, because they're the strong likelihood that they do have a tough round of 16 matchup. That being said, like I did say, I do have France winning the group, Denmark in second, and I do think Denmark is a tougher round of 16 opponent than Argentina would like to see. We'll get into our knockouts in a little bit, but man, if we see a France Argentina round of 16, that is going to pull some ratings, to say the least. Mbappe versus Messi, and there's so many like awesome storylines.
I'm gonna mark our clip right here just so I remember to put up that Messi stat I sent you of like the ball progression versus goal, because it's just Messi up there.
It's gross.
I'm marking the clip right now. I'm going to remember to put that up on our video because it's ridiculous. Let's move on to Group E. At least in the top 2, this feels like the group of death. It gets a little lighter once you move on, but who's your X factor in this one?
We can't disrespect good old Nick's Japanese squad there.
I was speaking more to Costa Rica. I like Japan.
I do too. I do too, but I do think it will likely be too tall of a task. It's a team that I think could have qualified out of group in a lot of groups, but not necessarily this one. For me, though, because the biggest question here is who will finish in first. I do have Leroy Sané as my X factor. I mean, just the news around his injury. I believe it was a torn muscle report like 2-3 weeks ago, but now the reports are he's fit. He was selected for the side. So for me, I mean, when he was reported as injured, the biggest question was, where are these goals going to come from? I don't think anybody fully trusts Kai Havertz. I don't think anybody fully trusts. Oh my goodness, I'm blanking
Grandpa
now.
Mueller.
Grandpa Mueller. I just don't think there's a ton of trust in goal scoring outside of him. So I think the biggest question for me is, will he be fit? And if he is fit, they could very well put forward a front 6 of all Bayern players.
Were you thinking of Serge Gnabry? Is that who you're thinking of?
Yes. Like, he can score, but can he be the goal scorer? When I was actually going through this, when a couple of days ago, when injury for Sané was still up in the air, he was actually my pick, because will he be able to score enough? But now that Sané's reportedly healthy, is he healthy enough to score? And if he is healthy enough, will that likely front 6 of all Bayern players mesh as well as it seems like it will on paper? For me, it's the biggest question for Germany is, will they find goal scoring? So for me, it does come down to him, and will he be able to provide that for them and be enough to overcome Spain?
Yeah, good shout. My X factor is a group of players, and that's the Spanish youth. Will the Spanish youth have their coming out party in this World Cup? Will they announce themselves as the second coming of that 2010 midfield? I think if they do, the Spain national team has the best coach of any international team. I think that's pretty consensus from what I've seen. And his system is, I mentioned in our group review, the Spanish system's been the same for ages, very similar to the Netherlands system, national team wise, and it's cohesive and it works. So if the Spanish youngsters in that midfield with Pedri and Gavi can get that going, this team can win the group and they can make a little bit of a run. I think with how their draw lines up. I could be wrong on that. If they win the group, I think they have a favorable-ish draw.
Yeah, I believe. Well, I don't know. I'm pretty sure they would face Croatia most likely in the round of 16. I mean, depends on without spoiling.
Yeah, they would face the Belgium, Canada, Morocco, Croatia,
and
group
most
runner-up.
I think most people would say that would be Croatia. But that's a Croatian side that I think both Spain and Germany would be favored against. So I certainly think that the storyline for me here is who finishes first.
So who do we have? 1, 2.
I have Germany first. I do think the German midfield is a bit
with Kimmich and Musiala, you have like the best of both types of midfielder.
Yeah, you're just a bit stronger, and I think in a head-to-head matchup against Spain, which is what I do think this comes down to, I would take the German midfield over the Spanish midfield, not just because of the youth, but because of the play style. We've seen Bayern have success against the likes of Barcelona very recently in the Champions League, and I think that's something Germany will look to put out there against this Spanish side that does have a heavily Barcelona influenced side. So I do have Germany first and Spain second, and I believe that's actually
it kind of feels like Bayern versus
picks.
Barcelona.
In a lot of ways, it does, and for me, I've seen enough of Bayern in Champions League against Barcelona that I can't bet against Bayern.
Damn, now you're making me rethink this because I got Spain 1, Germany 2, but I'll keep it for the T. Group F is Belgium, Croatia, Morocco. I've got F1 on my mind, I guess. And Canada. Who's your X factor in this one?
It's the Bruges boys from Canada for me. Buchanan and Larin. Brugge. Canada, if they will make a run, will need a lot out of Davies, David, and the Bruges boys. Larin led the team in goals with 13 goals in World Cup qualifying. I think a lot of the success that they had did come from not necessarily Davies and David, both of whom were hurt at times during qualifying, but it came more from those Bruges boys. So I think if they are going to make noise and disrupt, I don't want to say this is a foregone group. I think most people are leaning heavily towards Belgium and Croatia. However, if Canada is going to disrupt anything, it's going to be on the backs of those two. One being very young in Tejan Buchanan, and one being a little bit more experienced in Larin. So I do see those two as kind of being the X factors of this group, because I do think if there is a team that will disrupt anything here, it will be Canada. And it's really hard. I haven't seen very many people pick Canada. I'm not ready to pick Canada, but it's really hard to sleep on Canada at this point with the performance they put forward in arguably the wildest qualifying that you'll see in World Cup qualifying in CONCACAF, just the craziness that CONCACAF is. So those are my two, again, I kind of doubled up here, but my two X factors in this group.
All right. I'm going to put Canada in its place right now. Canada is wafer thin at the back, and they're not going to be able to rely on their Winnipeg Winters like they did in qualifying to defend for them. I'm just going to say it now. I don't believe in Canada at all. And I think the X factor is going to be, I don't even really know how to say this, but I genuinely believe that they fully relied on their elements to beat the brakes off of the CONCACAF Central American teams and the U.S. and Mexico. And they used it to hide a lot of deficiencies at the back. I think Canada's going to score. I think they'll score against Belgium and Croatia. But I think Belgium puts 4 or 5 past Canada, to be completely honest with you.
So they're playing devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
They're 2-0 wins at Honduras and El Salvador when Mexico and the U.S. couldn't replicate those results. Don't give you faith. Like for me at this point, there's just been too much. Honestly, I always tell myself I'm not going to bring it back to this, but it feels like a bit of Newcastle Arsenal ish. Like I questioned both of those sides in the Premier League for so long, and I was proven wrong too many times. I'm kind of at that point with Canada because when Canada did come out in World Cup qualifying and get off to that hot start, I mean, I was kind of on the same wavelength as you. Like, okay, this will cool down. I don't see that much talent, but they've proved me wrong too many times to believe that they aren't at least somewhat a legitimate contender. Now, I'm not saying, again, I'm not saying I'm ready to pick them ahead of the other teams in this group to qualify per se, but I mean, they drew 1-1 in Nashville against the U.S. Like they drew 1-1 at Azteca. Like they put together some very impressive performances in CONCACAF. So I'm not willing to discount what Canada has brought to the table thus far. And yes, U.S. at home and Mexico, or U.S. on the road and Mexico on the road.
I was going to say,
are not Belgium on a neutral field. I understand.
Honduras and El Salvador scored 7 goals in 14 games in qualifying.
But they're not fun places to play. Like when you look at
the
results the U.S. pulled, like in qualifying, like they're not attractive places to play. I mean, and now I feel like I'm almost talking myself out of the U.S. in a way by doing this because U.S. drew at El Salvador as well, and I'm pretty sure U.S. beat Honduras on the road. But like, I'm not ready to discount Canada. I don't necessarily think they'll make it through this group. I'm just not fully ready to say I don't believe in Canada at all. Canada's nothing, but that is also probably my CONCACAF bias. I refuse to believe we finished behind a team that has zero chance to qualify out of the groups. At least I got to give the U.S. a little credit. My bias is showing through hard here, but I'm just not ready to say Canada is a foregone conclusion not making it because of their success in qualifying.
Fair enough. So we got Belgium, Croatia 1-2.
Yep. Belgium, Croatia 1-2. Despite the Bruges boys being my X factors, they are my X factors. I just don't think they'll quite be able to do enough. I think they'll be able to make it interesting, but not quite do enough.
I'll give you a counter X factor just for a team that we do have qualifying. It's metronome Modric. If he can continue to play at the level that he does at the international level, I think Croatia will be able to get through. Group G. I've talked myself into this being the group of death.
I'm not ready to go that far. It is the group of goals. Go that far. It is certainly the group of goals. There is an interesting line out there for any of my sports betting followers for the highest scoring group. And I haven't laid a wager. You'll see my futures picks tomorrow, but
it won't be B. I'll tell you that.
It will not be B. It is a tempting group. It is a tempting group to look at for that. But for me, the X factor here on the theme of goal scoring is Vlahovic for Serbia. He's a guy that we all know his talent, beyond supremely talented. But man, has he underperformed since his transfer. He had 1 goal in 5 games in the Champions League. So my biggest question and why he's my X factor, is it player regression or is it the result of watch my words here, a underperforming, to put it nicely, Juventus team? Because that is a signing. When he went to Juventus, it seemed like all the pieces were in place for him to excel at Juventus from a goal scoring level, and he hasn't. But at the same time,
in a league he knew. Also,
he has played better in Serie A. But my question more is, I mean, you can poach off of some of those lower Serie A teams more than you can in some other leagues. But his Champions League performances have been very subpar. I mean, a guy for his fee and his highly thought of talent, you don't expect 1 goal in 5
guy last January. He was
Was he the biggest signing? He probably was the most coveted signing.
I think so.
Without looking it up, I would say he was likely the most coveted signing, and he's got 1 goal in 5 Champions League games at a very legitimate, high-profile side. So the biggest question
after they got rid of Dejan Kulusevski and Rodrigo Bentancur to bring him in.
So the biggest question for me for that team is he ready to take the next step? I think at this point I've much like I've been proven wrong on Canada thus far and Newcastle and Arsenal, I think Mitrovic has proved me wrong. He can perform at high levels on the biggest club stage, so I have no reason to believe he can't at the World Cup. But I now do have questions on Vlahovic on a big stage against the best of the best. Will he be able to perform? And I think it's a Serbian side that, if he can make some noise in this tournament. We touched on their in our group preview, their next round may not be super friendly for them, if you will, if they do finish second. However, I do think it is a side that could make a whole lot of noise if him and Mitrovic are firing on all cylinders.
Yeah. I don't have an X Factor storyline or anything for this group. I think this is a clear-cut 1-2 for me. I have Brazil, Serbia. I think the question then becomes who finishes third, which I don't care, honestly. And neither should you.
So wait.
Yeah, go ahead.
Before we move on,
yep.
You gave me a whole lot of crap for not picking an X Factor.
Well, I'm also
saying it wasn't good for the podcast.
I'm also looking at our time. All
right, we can move on to our final group before this runs too long. That is fair.
Our final group is Group H, which is the spiciest group, like, to me. I just think
for a whole lot of reasons.
Yeah, this has the potential to be an absolute fireworks show, both for good and bad reasons. Dylan, who's your X Factor player?
Oh, I love this one. I've been waiting for this one. It's Ronaldo, and not for the maybe in the last 48 hours, the reason people think, can they hold it together? And if they can hold it together, if he can check his ego at the door and not continue to disturb the dressing room, I think everybody that's listening to this or watching this has likely seen the videos of him entering camp with Portugal, and the very cold reception he had, not only from Bruno Fernandes, but from multiple players, Man United affiliated or not.
Yeah.
It was a very cold reception for him. And I think the biggest question for that Portugal side is, will it be a locker room issue? Will it be a dressing room issue without a doubt, the most legendary player in the country's history? Will they be able to put that aside, look at the task at hand, and execute? Because I think if they can execute at their highest possible level, they have every potential to make a very deep run, because we talked in our group preview about how disgustingly deep this team is in many facets. But at the end of the day, it is an 11-man sport, and if all 11 guys aren't clicking on all cylinders, it is a recipe for disaster. And we've seen that in the past with some very talented teams, whether it's Brazil's 7-1 loss or Germany getting knocked out in the group stage. Like, it is a very team-oriented sport, and right now I have questions about Portugal as a side and their cohesiveness, and I think that starts and ends with Ronaldo.
Yeah, my X Factor is also Ronaldo related, and basically for the same reason. It's the storylines. How is it going to translate to, like, on-field pettiness, or are they going to put everything aside for Portugal? I wanted so bad not to advance Portugal out of this group. And when we did our preview, I had them in third, but I looked at that roster again and I just thought it's too good. So that's the chalk that I'm going with. I'm not going Portugal 1. I'm going Uruguay 1, and Portugal 2. I think Uruguay beats Portugal, beats them, doesn't draw them, but I don't know. I just don't know if Ghana or South Korea will have enough to duke it out with Portugal on points. I think ultimately they come in second, which would line up a first round tango with Brazil.
I do not, and this is bad because we recorded this less than a week ago, do not remember what I had advancing when we recorded our group preview.
You had Ghana in second, I remember.
Yeah, cool. All right, so we're rolling with it, and I still have Uruguay in first and Ghana in second then.
All right.
I think there's just too much going on at Portugal, and if I thought that a week ago, and all of the Piers Morgan drama has officially released since we recorded that,
it's all gotten worse. It's all gotten worse since we
recorded. To back out on that now, so I am all in on Portugal self-imploding. It is not something I'm gambling on. It is a bit of a homer's the wrong word because it's the opposite of homer. I am the biggest Ronaldo hater you may find, not even because I'm Messi through and through. I just can't stand Ronaldo, never have. I think this will be his downfall, and we will see his legend of the sport be really tarnished, I should say, by this World Cup and the lack of success that I think Portugal is likely to have because of him.
Yeah, I don't think there's not a chance of that happening. I obviously picked that to happen when we recorded like 3 days ago, and it's only gotten worse since then. But honestly, I watched James Alcott's video, and he's like, guys, this team is just too good, which I'll believe you, James.
They are. I mean, they to be fair, he's not wrong. This is
Yeah.
more of a spite pick than any and a hopeful pick than anything. As I said, by no means
it's one you can tout if it happens, and if it doesn't happen, then you're like, oh, it doesn't happen. But
yeah, and then
not,
I'm on record here saying yes, they are supremely talented, and I can
twice.
just go. Ronaldo checked his ego at the door, and good for Ronaldo.
Yeah.
He finally saw that he isn't the hottest thing since sliced bread or whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
Like, he finally got over himself and was able to put it aside, and they're successful. And there are enough players on the Portuguese side outside of Bruno Fernandes and Ronaldo that I do enjoy watching that I will find a silver lining in it if it happens. But man, what I will love seeing those two flame out in the round of 16 in what should be one of Portugal's years.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and get into the knockouts now that we've picked our groups and our X factors. Our first knockout game, I'm just going to start at the top. We've got Group A1 versus Group B2. So for me, that's Netherlands, Wales. For you, that's Netherlands in the U.S.
Netherlands.
Same. Moving on to the round of 16 game.
For you.
Or for me. Sorry. Yes, for me. I was like, wait, no, you didn't pick that. It's Argentina versus France for me. So that's Group C winner and then Group D runner up. It's going to be hard for me to get through all these and remember that. I'm going back and forth between tabs. I've got Argentina. I got France. I'm not giving France that defending champ group exit, but I'm giving them that round of 16 exit. And it's weird. I think if France had advanced further along in the tournament, I would have given them kind of that benefit of the doubt. Maybe if they do win their group, I think it's a team that could get better as the tournament goes on. But I think if they run into Argentina that first round, the Messi train will still be going at full speed at that point. And I have Argentina advancing in that game.
Yeah, I have Argentina, Denmark, but I do still have the overall same result. I do have Argentina qualifying for the quarterfinals. If they do match up against Denmark, I think it's just too much firepower. And if somehow it is France, I'm on the same train. I do think that Argentina's
You're on the
team will
Messi
just be
train.
a little bit more cohesive and a little bit just stronger all around team. And it just feels like that storyline that the World Cup tends to lend itself to at times. So I do have, honestly, I'll say it. I don't think France finished second, but I'll say it. Regardless of who finishes second in Group D, I got Argentina advancing to face Netherlands in the quarterfinals.
Bet. All right. Next one, I think we both have Spain versus Croatia. No, I have Spain. You have Germany. Excuse me. I don't know how many times I'm going to do that. That's Group E winner versus Group D.
Group F
runner up. Yes, Group F runner up. I've got Spain advancing in this one. I think I'm really high on the Spanish youngsters really projecting themselves to the world in this World Cup. This might be the last game I have them winning, but I do have them defeating Croatia in this one.
Yeah, so I think for me, this is one. I do have Germany advancing in my personal bracket. This is one for me, though. I think the results out of Group E will kind of change how I look at this. I do think if Spain were to advance, I do think I would pick Croatia, but I think Germany's just too strong, front to back, top to bottom, defense to forwards, everything to lose to Croatia. And I think I know Croatia's that team everybody sleeps on. Everybody or every year. People have talked about it going into this. Don't sleep on Croatia. Again, you made that mistake before, but it's just not a Croatia team I believe in fully to beat Germany. If it were Spain, I think there's a good chance that Croatia would put up a better fight against them. But for my bracket's sake, I do have Germany winning the group, and then I subsequently have Germany knocking out Croatia in the round of 16.
Yeah, I don't want to disrespect Croatia. I absolutely, I'm on record as saying Luka Modric is my favorite non-Spurs player. I just think 2018 was their peak. That's as far as they could go. I think they're in most years a round of 16 or round 8 team, and that's what I have them at this year. So for this next game, I have Brazil Portugal. You have Brazil Ghana. I'm assuming we both probably have Brazil winning this game.
I don't really think there's even much to say. I mean, you might have more to say because it would be Neymar versus, Ronaldo, and there's probably more storylines in yours. For mine, it's I would take Brazil -2 against Ghana.
I think Brazil would beat Portugal worse than they would beat Ghana. That might be a hot take.
That's a hot take. It's a hot take, but I can see where you're coming from just based off of off of play style. But regardless, I think we're both on the same page here. I think this is a Brazil lock, if you will, to the quarterfinals.
Yeah. Moving down to the other side of the bracket now, we have England, and I have Ecuador, and you have Senegal. Mm-hmm. I do have England winning this game. I think we saw it in the Euros. Once England hit the knockout rounds, they started getting better. I don't know how far England can go in this tournament. But if they're clicking, they can go far. And I think they'll just be too much for my pick, Ecuador. I have England advancing.
Yep. Yeah, I have England over Senegal, and I don't think there's a lot to say there. England's just supremely talented. And it's as simple as that for me.
For this next game, I have Denmark, Poland, and you have France, Mexico.
Wildly different. So you go ahead and start us off here. What do you see in your matchup?
So obviously, this comes as the weird one for my group. D, is that what France is? France and
yes, yeah, France. D. That's D.
So this is probably the least sexy round of 16 matchup.
Yes.
You've got the battle of the red and white flags. Denmark, I love the way they're playing internationally right now. I think they stopped Poland, whatever Poland had in the group that advanced them. I think they stopped that in their tracks. And I think they gain that confidence heading in to their quarterfinal versus England.
Yeah, and I'm interested, as you are a Denmark sympathist, if you will.
I'm a Denmark believer. They don't need my sympathy.
I am interested to see how that England-Denmark matches up for you. But for me, I have France and Mexico. And I think this could be ugly if this is the matchup. It's another one, much like Brazil-Ghana, I'm pretty sure I would take France -2 here. I see them winning by a minimum of 2 goals against Mexico. Again, they're too talented for Mexico to hang with them, despite Mexico's play style. I think at the end of the day, the forward attacking presence of France would just be too much to ask Mexico to cope with.
Yeah, I love that we had a different matchup there. That's awesome. Good for the show. For this next one, we both have Belgium. I have Germany, and you have Spain. This was tough. This was really tough for me. They're similar teams. I think Lukaku bangs a brace here, though. And I think Belgium beats Germany 2-1 and advances to the round of 8.
So I didn't go that in depth with my prediction, deciding who scores what. But I agree. I mean, Belgium-Spain is just as tough as Belgium-Germany. I do think this is finally the time Roberto Martinez...
Germany and Spain are completely interchangeable, like, for me and everything in this. Like, wouldn't be surprised either way.
Yes, 100% agree. And for me, this is, without spoiling the rest of the episode, please listen to the rest of this. I think this is finally the year Roberto Martinez does something with Belgium. They are supreme. There's so much talent. They're oozing at talent in the midfield. They have Lukaku, who is a proven goal scorer on the highest level. They have very good goalkeeping. It's just a Belgian side that I think it's gotta click at some point, and I think this is the year. I would be a little bit more scared picking Belgium if it were Germany finishing in second in this group, but I do have Belgium advancing, and I'm pretty sure I would have Belgium advancing regardless.
Yeah, I think though the Belgium back line, and this is very biased of me, it's not the star power it used to be, but I think that Vertonghen and blanking on the Alderweireld, I believe are still their starting center backs, former Spurs players. They've been playing together on that back line for so long, and we've talked about Germany's goal scoring issues. I just think that in the end, they're able to limit Germany to less goals than themselves, which typically in a sporting match
is good.
Will win you the game.
And
so
let's not forget they have the best goalkeeper in the world right now as well.
Yes. Yep. Next is I have Uruguay, Serbia.
Yep.
I forgot.
As
you
do
the
I.
same?
Yep.
Okay. Serbia. This for me is
Tough one too.
The it game. Besides the France, Argentina. I don't want to spoil anything. I think that Serbia, if they win this game, they go on their Croatia run from 2018. I really think so. But I don't have them winning this game. I have Uruguay winning and moving on to the round of 8. I'm just really the more I think about it, I'm very high on Uruguay this year. Very high on Uruguay.
When we did these brackets earlier in our process for prepping for this episode, I did pick Serbia, and I was, as we were sitting here, as I was thinking about it, very tempted and very close to switch it. I've already switched one since the one I sent you, but I was very close to switching to Uruguay. But I do think I am still a believer in Vlahovic as a player. I think he, I think there is a chance, much like we see with Gareth Bale, plays his best in the Wales shirt. I think there's a chance, a very good chance, Vlahovic does something similar for Serbia.
Vlahovic has 8 goals in 16 international games,
which
pretty good.
Pretty good record. And then you have Mitrovic, who is
50 and 76,
and
very good.
And not only has he done that on the international, because when I look at some of these international stats, I do try and take them. I know I quoted them earlier in our X Factor, but I do try and take some of them with a grain of salt because of the competition you may play.
Sure.
But for Vlahovic, I know for a fact the talent is there. We've also seen it on the international stage for him. And then when you look at Mitrovic, we've seen it on the international stage for longer. But during that period, we had some questions about could he perform at the highest level in England? And he's proven all of us wrong that thought maybe he couldn't. So I think just the goal scoring ability between those two in the front line, not 100% sure how well they meld. Admittedly, I haven't watched a ton of Serbian national team games when they're both playing, but I do have Serbia advancing here over Uruguay.
We will be in this World Cup because they are appointment television, as we've mentioned.
Absolutely, and you could say the same, arguably, about Uruguay, though. I mean, with their two front attacking players in Suarez and Nunez, there's certainly nothing to overlook. I just think I have slightly more trust in that Serbian attack, which again is probably somewhat my bias against certain players, both Nunez and Suarez. But I do have Serbia advancing to the round of 8 or quarterfinals, if you will.
All right, back up to the top. This is a good one. Netherlands and Argentina. Two pretty different styles of play.
Extremely different.
Two very different countries. It's a cultural clash. I mean, I have Argentina going through. This might be like an 89th minute winner where, I know that's not a bold prediction in a World Cup game versus Netherlands and Argentina, but ultimately I just think Argentina, they're destined for that Brazil-Argentina matchup, and I think they're going to get to it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is honestly, I started to say this is the most coin flip out of all of them. But when you look at the other format or the other 3 of the 4 matches, I think there are a lot of somewhat coin flip games. So I don't want to say it's the most coin flip, but I do think play styles are very different. It is very hard to predict, but it does feel like at minimum we will see Messi in a semifinal. I'm a storyline guy. I'm very much that type of fan. So this may be another one of my somewhat fan picks, but I did select, I should say, Argentina to knock off Netherlands and make that semifinal.
And I think this might be where you see that Netherlands goalkeeper potential issue come up in this game versus Lautaro Martinez and Lionel Messi. So then this next game, I have Spain, Brazil. You have Germany, Brazil. Is that correct?
Yep.
I've got Brazil. This is where the train stops with Spain. I think they make that good run into the round of 8, and Brazil's just too good for them. I think 2026 Spain might be a favorite.
Yes.
But for this one, I think Brazil handles Spain with relative ease for a quarterfinal game.
So I will say I also have Brazil over Germany, but in my futures picks, another spoiler, I do not have a pick for the World Cup winner in my official futures picks. And the reason I don't is 75% the fact that I think this matchup in the quarterfinals is Brazil-Germany. Because I think if there is a team well-equipped and sound enough to beat Germany, and this is not just because of that 7-1 game we saw previously, because that is well in the past. I promise I'm not taking that into account. But if there is a team that I think can really give Brazil a run for their money before they're necessarily ready for it, if you will, because a Brazil team in the semifinals, a Brazil team in the finals, they're a fine-tuned, well-oiled machine at that point. But you could argue this is, for a team like Brazil, still on that earlier side. They may have gone through groups trying to figure out the best system and tried to implement that in the round of 16 and just now be hitting the ground running with that best system for them. It is a game that scares me and scared me away from backing Brazil because I do think it will be two very difficult games to get to the finals for them. But I do, at the end of the day, still have Brazil beating Germany here.
So there it is, the Argentina-Brazil semifinal that we all are seemingly destined to see, hopefully. This next game for me is England-Denmark. For you, it's England-France.
Yep.
This is where England bows out on penalties for me. I've got Denmark. I've got Denmark avenging that Euro 2020 semifinal loss. And I think they do it. I think they get through.
I would love it. I mean, anytime England loses in penalties, I'm kind of a fan. As long as Nick Pope isn't the keeper. If Nick Pope's the keeper, Denmark is not winning on penalties. I'm just throwing it out there right now. Dude is a brick wall. But I do have France here and not anybody else, because I do think France is, I don't know. I have a very hard time thinking France will lose to Denmark or be in a situation where they do not advance in first over Denmark. So I do have France here. And I do think this is a game where
England.
No, I do have France playing against England as opposed to Denmark. So I do have France advancing over England because I do think France is just the more talented team despite the question marks in their midfield. I think this is a game where Mbappe could, I don't want to say explode, but this is a game that feels like it could be maybe he's had a quiet tournament up until then and nets a brace and just gives France that little bit extra to go over England. I would love for it to be in penalties, though, because England's history in penalties is just supremely comical for me. So sign me up. If the way we get an England elimination via penalties is Denmark winning the group and then subsequently losing or beating England on penalties, I'm all in. Give me that. I'll be wrong in my bracket. I'll bow out of the bracket contest. So I hope you're right, but I do have France beating England here, likely in regulation.
All right, the last one. I think we both have Belgium, Uruguay. Is that correct?
Belgium. I took Serbia here. I wanted to switch to Uruguay, but I just couldn't quite do it. So I do have Belgium, Serbia. For me, I have Belgium advancing. I think this is a situation where the midfield does enough for Belgium, and their keeper, as I said earlier, is, in my opinion, the best keeper in the world, and just does enough. There will be scoring opportunities for Serbia, and I think Thibaut Courtois just does quite enough to get Belgium across the line against that Serbian attack.
So this is my Spurs gonna Spursy or my Belgium gonna Belgium game. This is where it's happening. I think Uruguay's midfield can match up with the Belgium midfield, just across the line, and I think they can score with them up top. I've got Uruguay advancing. I'll say 2-1. Extra time, 2-1. Uruguay.
All right.
I'm not going to give much more analysis. It's strictly vibes, and Belgium going to Belgium.
All right. I mean, that's fair.
And I also just don't want to go chalk, which
and Belgium gonna Belgium is fair. I mean,
yeah,
they have been. I mean, under Roberto Martinez, been a drastically underperforming team. So I think if
so we're basically just going different direction on Belgium because you think this is the time.
I think it's got to hit for them at some point, and I supremely do not blame you for saying they will Roberto Martinez Belgium the heck out of this and waste Courtois. Like that's a very real possibility for sure.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually changing my pick right now in this semifinal game. Argentina, Brazil. It's messy, baby. It's messy, baby.
It's not.
Argentina
it's not.
to the final. Argentina to the final. And I had Brazil because I convinced myself they're just too good. But I just don't care. I
know we're going long, but I need at least a 2-minute explanation on what part of Argentina can beat Brazil. Like other than the Messi storyline. If that's your only argument, we can keep it to 30 seconds, and that's fine. I can accept that. But like from a football, soccer, tactical perspective, what part of Argentina do you think can beat Brazil? Because I just don't think there's enough depth there, front line to back line to goalkeeper, for an Argentina side to really compete with Brazil, who, I mean, their midfield alone is like an embarrassment of riches, and they arguably have 2 of the 3 best goalkeepers in the world, and they just have to pick which one they feel like going with. So,
did you see the Copa America final?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so they can beat Brazil on a big stage, and Messi can score a winner. And it's just it can. So
we don't think the Brazil team is any better now than they were at that Copa America where Argentina,
they absolutely are, but so is Argentina.
Are they? What part of Argentina's gotten better?
I would say definitely that you have Christian Romero and what's his face, who's the little man on Man United. Lisandro Martinez they're both at a better, more mature point versus better competition.
Fair. That's fair. No, I think
they were then. And I think Emi Martinez is a supremely underrated goalkeeper on the international level.
Oh, he's good, but he's no Alisson or Emerson.
No, Ederson. You mean?
Ederson.
Don't say Emerson.
Emerson Royal. That GIF or whatever the meme I sent you.
Yeah.
In my head.
Yeah.
Ederson. Apologies.
Look, I mean, Brazil's the better team, sure, but Croatia made the final in 2018.
Okay.
I think.
No, yeah,
I think it can happen, and Argentina just beat Brazil, like middle to late last year to win a major international trophy. Okay. So, my head tells me Brazil, my heart tells me Argentina, but my head also tells me it's not that crazy of a pick. So that's what I'm going with. I also partially am doing it to set up this storyline in the final, which we'll get to. But you have Brazil going through in this game. I
think it's pretty obvious I have Brazil. But that being said, like I was somewhat mocking your pick, but I mean, again, another reason I didn't pick Brazil as a winner is because their road is hard. I think they match up with Germany and Argentina, respectively, in the quarterfinal and semifinal. And I'm not willing to put money on anybody to comfortably beat those two and win a third game right after. So I see where you're coming
potentially
from.
A Portugal team in the first round that could be good if they put it together. That could
be like they're
a nightmare.
I think they are by far and away the most talented team. I think they're definitely the deepest team, but I think their road is the hardest. So while I do think they play 10 games, I take Brazil in 7 of them. probably, but that still leaves 3 for Argentina to win, and that's exactly why I couldn't put a futures ticket on Brazil at plus 450, because I think their road's just too tough, and Argentina being one of those teams. But when it's all said and done, if this game were to happen, I would likely, depending on the line, be betting on Brazil, because I do think they're just the far superior team, top to bottom.
Yeah. Go ahead and start talking about your second semifinal game, and I have to let Shelby into the apartment real fast.
So I have France and Belgium. I think this is a spot where Reed and I differ a little bit, based on quite a few factors. Who he thinks is going to win France's group, and Belgium possibly getting knocked out by Uruguay. But for me, I do think just getting here, I think Belgium and France are much more talented than the two sides they're playing. I do think in this specific matchup, I think the difficulty to repeat or have a chance to repeat kind of shines through here for France. And as I said earlier, I think in the group, and I think in the round of 16, and I think in the quarterfinals, I said I do think this is Belgium's year to finally make a breakthrough, finally make a legitimate run. I think it will be partially on the backs of Courtois, Lukaku, and De Bruyne. But man, if you got to put your money on 3 guys to help you make I don't want to say a Cinderella run, because I think they're ranked, third in the world, and they were ranked first until like 6 months ago. But from like a betting perspective and a consensus perspective, it would be not quite a Cinderella run, but it would be a surprise if they made the finals. But I do think this is the Belgian side to finally break through. And I firmly believe in Roberto Martinez as much as I hate Everton. I firmly believe in him as a manager. And I think he will finally kind of break through here. And I think we can see De Bruyne really, if it is the matchup I expect, I think we can see De Bruyne kind of exploit that banged up French midfield here.
All right. So I've got Denmark, Uruguay, a far different semifinal than you have. But hey, like I said, we're here for the vibes, baby.
Denmark, Uruguay is different vibes, but supremely vibes.
It is.
Talk about contrasting cultures.
Yeah. Yes.
Football wise, people wise,
Yeah.
You couldn't find more different national teams.
For sure. And I think the buck stops here with Denmark. Like I said, I'm very high on Uruguay. And for the first time since the very first World Cup back in 1930, I have a World Cup final with no European teams and a rematch of the very first ever World Cup final that I think they need to move from Qatar to Buenos Aires for Argentina versus Uruguay, a rematch of 1930 and Lionel Messi's last ever World Cup game. Talk about vibes, baby.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about that would be I want to say like 8 a.m. start for both of them in their respective countries. So sign me up, man. If we get just how they always do those like town square videos, just 8 a.m. a bunch of just hammered Argentinians and Uruguayans. I think.
Uruguayans, yeah, I think
Uruguayans.
So.
Man, sign me up. I'm pretty sure it won't happen, but I would be here. If we're talking vibe check, that is the vibe check of all World Cup vibe checks. We got a World Cup in the Middle East with 2 passionate South American fan bases waking
neighboring
up
countries.
At 7
Uruguay's
a.m.
right there. It's like right there sandwiched in between Argentina and Brazil.
Can we get like the border of North Korea and South Korea always has like those cameras on it? Can I get one of those on Argentina and Uruguay in that final? Because that would be electric. So if
what these fans need to do if this happens, they all need to caravan up to Rio and watch it in Rio.
And just partying at Rio.
We would get a South America World War III if that happens.
Yeah, we've been talking about all the political angles from this, and then we just slap an Uruguay-Argentina final in the middle of it.
Yeah.
That would be, full vibe check. I don't think you're right. Just throwing that out there. But I don't think you're right, but that is an all-time vibe check, and I would be here for it. In this chaotic, dystopian world of yours, who do you have winning that World Cup final? I'm guessing I know the answer, but
I have Argentina winning the World Cup in 2022.
fun stuff. I mean, as a fan of the game, that would be my pick. I think I saw a couple of times from my Newcastle English soccer Twitter sphere, some people that said like posted various gifs or memes or videos like about 90% of them wanting England to win the World Cup, but 10% of them is like, man, I really want Messi to win. And I feel like that's how everybody but Portugal feels right now. Everybody but Cristiano Ronaldo fans feel I have these objectives for either my country or my players in this World Cup, but at the end of the day, I would love to see Messi win. And I'm also one of those people, but I'm also a little bit more practical. So I did pick.
Okay, don't tell me that Argentina beating Brazil is that outlandish.
No, it's not. It's not. But my goal here, and this is why I never win a March Madness bracket. My goal here is to put together the safest, most successful bracket.
Yeah, you have like the 4 top teams in the world playing each other. That's not. Yeah. We just know that's not going to happen. Come on.
Maybe it will. Maybe it
will.
Maybe this is the year. Maybe this is the year talent matters over everything.
We've got a lot of TikTok clips from this podcast. So
I have Brazil give Bruno Guimaraes his World Cup champion medal that he can take back to the tune, and I can go hold it when I'm there in May. I do have Brazil beating Belgium. I think Belgium finally gets over a little bit of a hump and does make a final. And for Belgium and Roberto Martinez, I think at this point, at this stage in their progression and cycle, I think that would be a very successful outcome for them. But at the end of the day, man, I'm not picking against Brazil. But that is exactly why I'm not laying a futures bet. Because when I look at it, Brazil is that good that they should win, but their road is too tough to lay a futures bet. But I'm also just not willing to bet on any team other than Brazil to win this. I think if there is a bet you would be interested in making in a futures bet, it would be for CONMEBOL to win the World Cup. You do get then both Argentina and Brazil. I do think there's a strong likelihood.
And Uruguay.
Sure. I do think there's a strong likelihood that somebody comes from that top bracket, left side bracket, whatever your bracket looks like that you have and you're filling out. I do think there's a strong, very, very strong chance one of those two win it. I think Brazil is too talented to lose to Argentina, but I do think whoever wins that likely semifinal matchup will win this World Cup.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you were practical and I was vibey, and I think it was a good episode, and I hope everybody knows everything they need to know about this World Cup, which again kicks off with the opening ceremonies on Sunday. Actually, let's do this. 30 seconds. Golden Boot. Who wins it?
So I bet on Lautaro Martinez, which is a little contradictory, but I liked his odds too much. Plus 2,000. $5 bet pays $100, something like that. So I do have Lautaro Martinez because I do think Argentina is likely to make a long run.
I'm also picking Lautaro Martinez.
Well, that is way less exciting than I was hoping for.
Well, I picked Argentina to win. So,
all right, quick. Who do you have for most assists?
You know what? Dark horse, Darwin Nunez, baby. Send it.
I don't think either of us recording this podcast can back Darwin Nunez, especially you, because I've at least become like,
I got Uruguay in the final, so I have to at least give him a chance.
It's worth a good half unit sprinkle. Worth a good half unit sprinkle if you believe.
Darwin Nunez is going to have to be in the top 4 for Uruguay to make the.
Yes, 100%. Because I think we all know Luis Suarez can score, but I do think he's he's certainly past his prime. He's been playing at home the last 6 months. So I do think if Uruguay does make a run, we have to see a lot out of Darwin Nunez. I just don't think Uruguay can make a far enough run to back him.
Yeah, that's fair.
Who do you have for most assists? This is kind of a fun one. Can you think of one offhand? You would probably go Messi, I'm guessing, with how far you have Argentina going. I have De Bruyne. Similar reason. I do have Belgium making a good run. I think Messi and Neymar are the 2 favorites, I believe, for assists, and De Bruyne is 3rd or 4th. But if you think Belgium will make a decent run, you can get good value there on De Bruyne.
Yeah. And then lastly, young player of the tournament.
This one was tough for me because I don't think anybody overly young is going overly far, but I would put Musiala here because I do have Germany making a little bit more of a run, and I do think he's going to kind of have a bit of a breakout tournament.
I think Vinicius still qualifies as
That's
young.
If he's Phil Foden qualifying, sure, I'll take Vinicius because Phil Foden qualified for way too long in the Premier League. But sure,
Yeah.
Vinicius still qualifies. In my head, he doesn't. But if he does, him. If he doesn't qualify, Musiala.
Okay, fair enough.
Who's yours? Is it Vinicius?
Yeah, it would probably have to be.
Yeah. If he still qualifies, I think it'd be silly to look elsewhere.
Yeah, I think you could also, having France going so far, you could look at Tchouaméni and Camavinga as well, or
Just
Saliba,
tougher,
probably.
In ways, tougher play styles and positions to attract that like notoriety for a player.
Sure. They're both kind of 8s, 6'8".
Yeah.
So, I think we've pretty much covered it comprehensively. There's that word.
I sure hope so.
Yeah. That has been the Planet Soccer podcast coverage of this year's World Cup. I don't know what our recording schedule will be during the World Cup. We'll figure something out. But we appreciate you guys sticking with us and watching. We hope we threw in a little bit of humor and personality there. We appreciate y'all listening, and y'all have a great night, day, morning, whenever you're listening, and enjoy this World Cup.
Like, retweet, subscribe, all the things podcasters say at the end. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys.